evening, everyone, and welcome once again to Poetry Live at the Erie County Public Library down at Blasco. I want to thank everybody for showing up, both in the audience and on stage. Once again, I think we're going to have just a fantastic night of poetry. I'm really excited to hear everything. Before we get started, just a couple reminders. One, this will be filmed tonight and live streamed and later put online on YouTube and our own Facebook. So for any readers, just acknowledge, I just want you to know that so that if you're not comfortable with that you can sort of prepare ahead of time. You know, we just want everybody to know what they're getting into. I also want to, of course, thank the Erie County Public Library for hosting this event. We're all really happy to be doing Poetry Live again. It's, especially in this world, being able to do this week after week, definitely one of the shining parts in my life. So I'm happy we're back. I'm sure there was a third thing I promised to tell you, but I seem to have forgotten it. Poetry rules. So everybody tonight is going to read 2 poems, 3 if all of them are short. And after you're done with your poem, you can sit down. Somebody else will take your spot, introduce themselves, and then read. And that's kind of just the process we're gonna be going with. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. And just to kick it off, I'll start with me. That way it's not too awkward when I sit down and come back up again. Because I'm really weird like that. Okay, these 2 are from a manuscript I've been working on for a little bit. Who knows when that will ever see the light of day, but I am happy to read from it. The first one is called A Census of Ghosts. A Census of Ghosts. They are everywhere, asleep on the sofa, hiding in a bread box, in a consignment shop. They're the insubstantial weight of things, the last note of the doorbell after you've already been let in. My niece was hard to find, hiding in the plastic frog goggles on my bookshelf, still in the box, the orange spots too bright to be freckles. I haven't heard her song in years. When I found her, she stopped singing. Earthworms, prophets, snails, some things can't be tallied. Moths are only marked once. 12 ride the bus to Ann Arbor every day and argue about baseball. A seat creases with the weight of one. The driver remembers their names. Someday I will be on the Atlantic as sand or the crest of waves. When counted, I will be so many, I will fill every page of their book. There you go. Thank you. Okay. And this other one is back from when I was living in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Well, I may have written it since, but it's about Kalamazoo. On the hill overlooking the intersection of Oakland and Stadium, we watched a woman push a man into the road. The car braked, but there was no use. Only dent and blood and orange clouds above everything. One of it laughed. It may have been me, and then another. He must have deserved it, something we agreed on, and turned away from the sirens. Years later, I am still turning and notice the smell of rot from the stream. Soft garbage collects among the cattails, where I've been told the fish can grow as long as a forearm, anyone's forearm. And if you are quiet, you can hear them. Somehow this is enough. When the mosquitoes start, I will leave. The traffic is backed up to Oakland, and in the dusk, there is laughter of dogs and children. It is possible the sky is also laughing. Thank you. And whoever is next.
Who's anxious?
Well, I used to be last, but now I am going rather early, but I'll do it. Let me just unmask myself a minute so I don't steam up my glasses. I'm Dan Mitchell, and this is the political poetry portion of the program, and yes, Art Vanguard is hosting it now. Tonight's reading is the continuation of the theme, Write About Your Jobs, or Write About Work. The reason we write about work is because that's the most political position most people find themselves in. It's their most valuable moment of their moment of making a valuable contribution to society. And that's why work is important, and you should be happy at work. All righty, here we are. These two jobs I'm going to define for you tonight, read about, are jobs I was holding after I got out of college. I was living in a collective, and so I was out searching for work, and I could work for a job at 2 or 3 weeks, and if I didn't like it, quit and go back, and I didn't have to worry about the rent and stuff. The guys were all chipping in, and everybody covered everybody. But back then, I was experimenting, finding out which jobs I liked and which shops were what we called hot shops, shops that had workers who were ready to fight back, who wanted to organize against corruption or something like that. So tonight is the one about being a cloth spreader. This was part of searching for the hot shop. And a cloth spreader is the person who just walks back and forth along this 50-foot table, laying down layers of cloth until you get a pile about 18 to 20 inches high that the pattern cutters come in with their long knives, and they cut out the patterns to shirts and dresses and suits, and this is how your clothes get made industrially. You lay out long tables of cloth, and they stack it high, and they cut the patterns out, and they ship everything out to the stitching plants, and everybody sews them up, and next thing you know, they're sticking a label on it. So this was the start of the whole procedure, and the lowest paying job was that of the cloth spreader, and all he does all day is march up and down, so I called it the March of the Cloth Spreader, searching for the hot shop. The spreader's work was the lowest paying job in the garment industry. All no-skill bulwark, walking back and forth in sheer monotony. Carts with rolls of cloth picked out just for certain customers. Placing a roll on the frame begins the long march of the textile fabric spreader. Step by step, roll by roll, on the long table you build up the layers, like a cloth Dagwood sandwich waiting for the next players. Pattern cutters with their long electric knives come to play to chisel out patterns from the cloth that'll soon be sent away. Sometimes it took all morning, sometimes it took all day for a spreader to pile high as many layers as the orders say. 20 layers of this red pattern and 30 layers of that green will build the biggest pile of cloth that you has ever seen. Day in, day out, you know exactly where you'll be, week after week, month after month, for the rest of eternity. Just pushing bolts of cloth back and forth 40 hours a week. You think, if I can't bid off this job, my future will be bleak. So I quit after a week. Thank you. And this job was working in a dyeing factory. And unfortunately, it was a dyeing industry, but the dyeing means putting color into cloth. You get white cloth and you turn it different colors. So I was working in a dyeing plant for a living. Dyeing for a living, I call this one, organizing in the textile industry. I was done with college for now, and I needed to earn a living. So I applied to the cloth dyeing plant, and sure enough, a job I was given. The first thing I learned was how to fill the huge washing machine with 1,000 yards of fabric that needed to turn green. So far, so good, I would think, as I filled it up with hot water, but when the chemicals went in, the smell was a different matter. I could step outside till most of the smell from the air was eliminated, but the new guy had to pour in the salt. This is the part I hated. When opening the top hatch, steam rose into my face as I poured an 80-pound bag of the stuff to keep the green dye in place. Health and safety will be tops on the union's agenda, I think, as I poured. Once I pull a committee together, these issues won't be ignored. I started doing home visits, thinking this would be a breeze. But each time I recruited a person, a week later they would leave. The workforce here was very small. There just wasn't enough interest in joining the revolution from the few people left on my list. Eventually, I moved on. Thank you. And that's it for the political poetry portion of the program. Next. Oh.
Hello, I'm Thasia. I'm going to read from my relatively new book, Pam's Jacket. This was written because I had to travel to Florida to my son's wedding, and I don't like to travel alone. And my friend Pam said, here, take my happy little jacket, and it'll keep you company while you're there. So the first poem happens right in the Erie airport. Me and Pam's jacket headed for Florida. We got stopped in Erie by TSA. And while I waited for a female agent to come pat me down, I became acutely aware that I did not know exactly what might be in the pocket of Pam's jacket. I stood there nonchalantly feeling to see if Pam's jacket even had pockets. After a successful pat down, me and Pam's jacket boarded the plane. Thank you. This is Pam's Jacket 4. Now, less than an hour to connecting flight, Pam's Jacket and I shared a ham and cheese panini. The young woman who took the order from me and Pam's Jacket needs to find a job that she enjoys more than panini Pete's. I asked a simple question, can I order here or do I need to sit at one of those tables? Depends. I asked, on what? What you order. I said slowly, panini? She rolled her eyes and said, what kind of panini? Pam's Jacket was getting ticked, but I stayed calm and clearly stated a ham and cheese panini. Yeah, you can order that here. Thank you so much. And this is Pam's Jacket 12. Me and Pam's Jacket make it down the skyway into the airport, and I can see Bear holding my winter coat. He's always a just-in-case kind of guy. It's chilly here compared to Orlando. We acquire my luggage and head to the car. How would you like to stop at Otis 12, he says. Cheeseburger fries are my favorite. Welcome home to me and Pam's Jacket. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mabel Howard, and tonight I'll take off my mask. All right, so tonight I'm going to lend my voice to a piece that was written by Dr. Maya Angelou, and it's called A Cage Bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see, though his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighting trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chuck Joy. I have two poems for tonight. The first one is called Distraction. These lines, a distraction from bliss, the peace beyond language. Meditation establishes a condition of awareness and existential joy through detachment from thought, abandoning the inner voice, including its pictorial division, in favor of presence, receiving impressions, observing the impressions fade, their rise and fall. No poems written in this condition. Light bulbs for lines left behind like they were worries about the future. Bright light bulbs pulled on by yanking bronze chains hanging from ceilings in green closets. Slumped to the floor, your back to the wall, transcribing lines into a folded over notebook. Or breathe. Let go. The glim from the bulb fading away into daylight. Thank you. Bliss. Here's a poem called Susurration. A welcome chorus, leaves, a rustle in the tall trees. Their susurration, something to talk over. Were we not alone, just you and me, and I am gone? You and your phone, you're reading me, my words, your voice, your own, the lines a post, as if displayed over a photo of the sunlit afternoon, except it's noise behind the silent words. It's music, the leafy trees, the instrument, a flautist, the wind, gentle yet firm. The song, a wordless melody to entertain the heat, taming its threatening excess, maintaining a comfortable setting. You sit in your air-conditioned work-from-home office, phone in hand, pausing your scrolling to read these words I wrote and posted to bring you outside with me. Surprise! Thank you.
Hello. I'm Todd. I finished Doris last week, so I don't have to read it this week. I'm really excited about that. But recently I discovered Adobe InDesign, so I put together a bunch of poems that I've written in the past 2 years into one of those design documents, and then would you look at that, I stapled me together a little book. So I'm going to read some other stuff that I put around Doris. This first poem, I have 3 poems. One's very short, so don't hurt me. This first poem I wrote on 4th of July in 2019, I believe. And while we were sitting kind of on the Erie Bayfront here, watching the fireworks, I thought it was really funny that we, as any country really in the history of the world, celebrates carnage, destruction, and violence as a part of national identity. So I decided to write a poem that is kind of coming from the fireworks, speaking to us humans as we kind of ooh and ah at them, and it's called Ruin. I am ruin. What once was lies changed beyond recognition, beyond definition. Was it even a thing? Was it even? When I ponder existence, I see sand, I see void, and I hear no voices at all. Not even the cicadas dare to sing, and the rushing air is silenced by my stare. No heart remains to care. The gods packed up, moved on elsewhere. I think, but of what? The gravel rolls for naught, and the waves have nothing to crash. When I'm through, I leave no memory. What remembers what never was? The crater fills with dirt. The tower tumbles into ash. Blood is only water in the desert. All I see disappears. All I touch deconstructs. All I was, all I am, all I ever will be is not. I am ruin. This next one's a bit of a joke poem. It's actually a haiku, I guess. By that I mean it's a 17-syllable poem. And it's called Modern Adonis Taking a Selfie. Oh, Dorian Bay, why can't you just crawl out of my phone and dress me? Thank you. All right. And for my last poem tonight, this is the prelude to Doris. I wrote it the same night that I wrote parts 1 through 4 of the poem that I just finished reading. And it's kind of in the same style. It's definitely a nonsense poem, but it's not Doris. So this is Preen. Pear-shaped in Paris. The vase leans on the coffee table like it's had one too many shots of Listerine. The gleam of the Eiffel Tower, seen through the mirror of my foggy window shower, this is the witching hour, of which I can attest is the best of the best of the best. Forget all the rest. I'm not dressed in my Sunday crest. I like to laugh because laughing makes me forget, and I bet that this room is a tomb that you soon won't sublet. I'll tail the turkey, take the reins. The strain of the strait won't sink this ship today. And I pray, and I pray, and a hidey, hidey, hey. It's a shame that I can't take any of this world with me. It's a game where the pieces elude me. Prepared and debonair, I am as clear as the smog that dances through my hair. Fair sheen. You won't see what I mean until the fog lifts and the final preen has put that last feather in its place. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Nisi, and I'm kind of glad that I'm not the only one reading a nonsense poem tonight. So, this one is called Bad Dream. I wrote it in '97, so you can kind of see the mind of an 11-year-old in 5th grade. It came out of me having a bad dream, or awkward dream, really, and writing about it, and then writing it in my English journal when I got to school. And a lady was named Patricia Herring. I'll never forget her. She was my teacher. And she saw that it was like decent writing, I guess, for an 11-year-old. So she submitted it, and it won a contest where it was published. So I got my first publishing in '97 without even trying, really. So that was kind of cool. So it's a nonsense poem, but somebody saw something in me, and it kind of started this whole writing thing for me. So it's called Bad Dream. Whew. The waves were crashing, booming, bashing against my boat, and then a big blast. I looked to the bottom of my boat. There was a hole in the hold in the bottom of my ship, and my supplies were going down fast. I grabbed the biggest bag that I could see, jumped down into the hold, and grabbed all the things that I might need. Then all of a sudden, I tripped over something. What was it, a bead? Then it started rolling, nonstop, and I knew for a moment that bead would be good luck. The bead kept rolling, still nonstop, until it came to a door and then a halt. A door, I yelled. Then a door? I realized I'd never experienced this before. A little precocious for 11. Then I thought, oh no, I'm still not going in there. But the boat still was sinking, and I was still thinking, so I made up my mind really fast. I opened the door, and to my surprise, another door should meet my eyes. I opened that door, and what do I see? You guessed it, there were monkeys everywhere. I don't know why I said that. It was 97, I don't know. The monkeys were playing games, one in a big tree. I looked at all the monkeys, and they peered back at me. Then they rolled their eyes, and they turned to ignore. And I just stared at the monkeys like I'd seen them before. The monkeys were not normal, unusual, and lots more. And God only knows why I opened that first door. Still in shock, I went past the monkeys and saw another door. And on that, it stated, beware, jungle animals everywhere. There was still no way out, only the door in front of me. I gathered all of my braveness and buried my fear. But one thing was still torturing my mind. Roaring, I thought I could hear. I turned the knob, I opened the door to see what I could see. And just then, all of my fear jumped right back inside of me. I looked around and there were tigers and lions and bears, oh my. They all looked at me and I tried not to move. I was nervous and then I sneezed, bad move. They spread out their claws and came dodging. Wake up, wake up, wake up, shouted my mother in my ear. Wake up, you act like you cannot hear. I sat up straight and looked around. I was in my room, no waves crashing, no big blast or boom. And then I said, it was not all what it seemed. This was all just a big bad dream. Wow. I read that the other day like, oh, a little precocious for an 11-year-old, but all right, so this one I wrote, it's a little weird, but I wrote this one 2 years ago today. And it was in the spirit of Domestic Violence Month. So as a survivor, I usually find it cathartic to write. So I wrote this one. It's called Repulsed. Okay, sometimes I get anxious, but let me get it out. All right. Repulsed by you. Your silence is violence is what it's called. I prayed to God on what to do because I am completely repulsed by you. And because I know that we share blood, I ask the Almighty God to cover me with his love. My elastic heart spirit is stirred every day by all the things that I would be remiss to say. Your silence is violence, and your neglect is disrespect. The stomachs of victims are riling as the church writes you a check. Would you allow a woman beater in your home to fix your water heater? Not concerned why you let him cut your grass, not knowing he could be eyeing your young daughters. I won't be crass. But trucking and smiling and making bids, never once taking the time to raise your kids. The kind of man who only raises his fists, playing OG Robin Hood like he's all good. Your silence is violence. Your neglect is disrespect. The stomachs of victims riling as the church writes you a check. Just cover your daughters, because he'll take them out for slaughter. He'll gaze at them as their tails wag, walking home from school with their book bags. And he doesn't even see them as hard. He just rolls up on them, hands them the business card. Then shower them with insignificant gifts, nice things, subsidized housing, extending a helping hand to your next of kin, just a tactic to keep you boxed in. Silence is violence, and neglect is disrespect. Stomachs of victim riling as churches write you the check. Targeting young girls just for their age, unable to challenge the unmanaged rage. And if it seems like she even dreams to defy, she better wake up, comply, and apologize. And then she cries. 13 stepping is the name of the game. It's easy to smooth talk these young, vulnerable dames. Using their weaknesses to empower your ego and pride just makes you feel more important inside. Your silence is the violence. The neglect is disrespect. Stomachs of victims riling as churches write you the check. However, there is one fact that one must remember. There's a man above that has a simple title, the God of Wonder. So for each woman you have misshapen and contorted, for every child that you forcefully aborted, each beautiful soul that you slapped around, physically and emotionally beaten down, the victory is written, absolutely clear. The Almighty God has counted every tear. The promise is told, the time is nigh, and it may be soon your time to cry. So on that judgment day, I truly and deeply hope and pray that I am healed of everything I know you do, and my soul is no longer repulsed by you. That's it.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. Normally, I invite anybody in the audience to read if they brought something, but we have a kind of thin audience today. Not that we don't love the people that are in the audience. So again, thank you all for coming. It was wonderful hearing your poetry. Just to mention a couple things, we'll be doing this again next week. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're going to have SafeNet and some of their people come in, and we're going to have them read, and we're going to have an interview with them to talk to them about what they do. So if you can, definitely make it to it here or tune in at home. And yeah, just want to thank you all and see you next week. Well, hello, Lucy. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. And thank you for reading tonight. It's fantastic. I especially liked bringing that poem from your childhood. It's so cool to see, to like look back and see that like kernel of where you started. Yeah. So that was like really
It's like
fun.
grade 5, 97, yeah, grade 5.
97, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess just talking about that, so how long have you been sort of considering yourself a poet? How long have you been writing? Because that started, like, you said that was your seed in 97.
Yeah.
When did you come back to it, or have you been writing nonstop?
I want, like, okay, that's 2 questions for me.
Okay.
So when did you start writing? I think, and not to be like precocious, but my grandmother and her oldest daughter, my aunt, were real big on, reading, education, and knowing about yourself, like culture. So before I started kindergarten, I was reading and writing.
Yeah.
And it somewhat was easy for my teachers, but sometimes it would be like, because the literature that I was reading, it was kind of like a grade level above, because my grandmother was serious about it.
Yeah.
So she'd be like, how do you know? So by 3rd grade, I was quoting Maya Angelou. I was quoting Nikki Giovanni. And they were like, what is this kid about? But I didn't know that I was quoting greats. I didn't know I was quoting literature that was above my grade level, because it was language in the house. It was normal.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just everybody knew. We were watching Oprah, we'd see those images on TV. It was the 90s. So like,
Yeah.
I thought it was in everyone's household.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, when did I start taking myself seriously? When people started noticing it, like I got published in 97 through that teacher that saw that I had some type of something with writing. Anytime we had a writing journal, she was somewhat impressed by my writing. And she would always ask or write a note, like, where did you get this from? Or she'd cite it and say, I know about this writer. I know Alice Walker or something.
Yeah.
Like, why do you know that? And then I'll go like, oh, my grandmother. So I guess she was watching me and then entered my writings, and then that's how I got published. So I would say like maybe high school.
Okay.
Maybe high school.
That's really cool. And when did you sort of get involved in the Erie writing scene? Because I've only been here for a couple of years, so I don't really know much about the writing scene. That's what I'm trying to like get into. but everybody seems pretty like tight knit. Everybody seems to know each other. Like, how did you get involved with that?
Well, my cousin, C. Williams, he does the Poets Hall, and he's a really good writer, and he's published. And I'm really impressed by him. There's other writers like Mabel and Chuck, Thasia, other people that I had seen reading and seen, doing open mics and spoken words and doing poetry. So I was drawn to them because of their subject matter. And I just started visiting, wherever they would be.
Yeah.
I would go in those places. After a while, I just thought, it was cathartic to share. Just sitting and listening was one thing, but just to start sharing my writing. I didn't know if any of the writing that I had done was any good because I wasn't reading it out loud, but I would post it. Or in high school, I would write poems for girls. I would write poems for girls if they wanted to like go out with a guy, or or if they had like a writing assignment. Like a lot of my friends knew that I was a good or a decent writer, so I would write for them,
Yeah.
and I didn't care. Like I would just like give me $10 and I'd write it, and then I'd see like they'd bring it back. There was a paper that this guy from a totally different school, he went to Central, and he heard about it, and he asked me, and I shouldn't even be saying this on camera, but he asked me, he's like, I got this paper that I have to write, and it has to be on this subject, and it really doesn't matter. I just need to get it done by Friday. And I had like 3 papers that I had written on my own that I had good grades on, and I'm like, just use this, and I gave it to him. The guy got a higher grade than I did on the same paper, and I want to say he got entered for a scholarship. I'm not sure if he got the scholarship, but I know he talked about that paper for a year, and I kept saying to him, you do know I wrote that. You keep bringing it up, and it was my paper. But,
Oh, man.
So I would say like high school, I did a lot of writing, and I didn't take it seriously until I remembered like people got good marks on my writing. So maybe I'll just attach my name to it.
Yeah.
And see what people say.
Claim it as your own.
Just start telling people, hey, it's me. So another thing, I was married to a musician for a while, and I would write, and he would turn it into music,
Okay.
and people would like it. But I never went like, hey, I wrote, I would just like enjoy it too. So I don't know, I think maybe in the last 3 years, I started taking myself seriously, like nurture your gift and, instead of just giving it away, actually try to put equity in it and, invest in yourself a little bit. So.
Well, I mean, that investment's definitely paid off. It's
Oh,
been
thank
really
you.
wonderful like hearing
You're
your
making my
poetry.
day.
Thank you. So I want to talk a little more specifically about your poetry because it does so many interesting things. One of the things that I like the most about your poetry, over listened to it for the last couple weeks, and also like you sent me some to read at a time, is that your poetry is always willing to like live in mystery. Like you're not always necessarily trying to solve the world; you're just trying to like live in it. And I find that
Good observation. I like that.
Thank you. And I like especially thought that to be the case in IDK, and also There's a Spirit. Why do you think that is? Why don't you fight against that mystery? Why do you live in it so much in poetry?
I think sometimes people they misunderstand me. I think that's a really good question because it gives me an opportunity to explain. I think people misunderstand me where they look at me and they say, oh, this girl's full of confidence and she's like boisterous and she's social, but I really struggle with my confidence. So like, I don't know, I think people think I try to be seen. I really don't. I'm an eccentric person. I'm an eclectic person. I really try to fit in, but not necessarily want to fit in. I kind of try to blend in so that nobody notices me, but I always get noticed. So like, I guess I enjoy living in a mystery. I enjoy writing like fantasy in a mystery, but I like to pull the mysteriousness out of real life, like out of real life actual subjects and things that happen, like issues that really affect my life or affect other people's lives. There's always that 2 sides to every story, and there's always like a mysterious something an energy that has nothing to do with the people, but something that's making that thing happen, and we can't understand it. So I like to not necessarily live in that, but elaborate and discover it and play around with it and toy around with it and just write. It's the way of like releasing.
Yeah, I like how you said like discovered. I think that's exactly what poetry's trying to do. Awesome, thank you. So another thing I have loved about a lot of your poetry is you do a really great job of mixing your personal life, but also the political world, because really there's no separation between personal and political, but we try to pretend there is. And you also do a really good job of balancing like humor and sort of starkness, sometimes all in the same poem. How are you able to keep your poetry so dynamic? Like it's so easy to fall into the trap of one or the other, but it's very dynamic poetry.
I think because, people say I'm a writer, and I do say writer as a general theme, because I write all types of things. I can write short stories, I like to write poems, limericks, all types of things. But as far as like, I'm trying not to make it so, I feel like it's hard to separate political and personal because of who I am without even trying.
Yeah.
I'm a young queer Black woman in America. It's a first world. It's supposed to be cool for me to be here, but for whatever reason, I go through these like different waves. Like with Obama, it was like tolerated, and then you kind of was like trendy. Before that was Bush, and it was like, you don't really want to, mess around with queers. But then it got to like now with this administration, it's like targeted. It shifted. It went to like, okay, with Bush, we're tolerating these people, but then like with Obama, you're like, oh, we're trendy. Everything was kind of cool, but now it's like we're back to the '60s. We're back to way back when, and it's difficult because I'm ex law enforcement. I used to be in corrections for over a decade, all my 20s, and I was really fresh and very new into it. It's a male-dominated environment. It's a white male-dominated environment. There was a handful of people that look like me, and I can't even say women, just people. And I'm like encompassing minorities of all, like other, people who check other. So it's very hard for me to separate that because I have so many levels of my personal being that's like a no-go. Like as a woman, they don't want to hear you. As a Black person, you're not getting heard. And then on top of that, to be queer with all of that, and I'm divorced. I was married to a man. I have kids. It's a lot. It's like just to be yourself and be an individual in America and not follow the conservative views. It's challenging. Yeah. So I try to like get it out through the writing. Yeah. And it really angered me. I didn't have a huge problem with Trump before he ran for president. Like he was wildly entertaining. He was just a regular grumpy white guy to me, like a billionaire white guy who was. People brought up how he treated people with housing and how he was not letting minorities stay. And I was just thinking, like, billionaires with real estate don't do that. So I wasn't pinpointing any of my feelings about him on the entertainment value. But when he ran for president, I was wildly annoyed. And then he won, and it just, my world just kind of like shook up. And I traveled back and forth to Canada. So it's like my family in Canada want to know what is going on in Pennsylvania. Like, just tell us, like, what's happening?
But this must be a strange conversation.
I don't want to talk about it. Just, I'm here for the weekend, guys. Like,
it's like I just want to live my life.
It's just too much. So I try to like, make, fun, make light of it. But it's a very serious situation what we're going through because I think we all knew what possibly could happen, and then what we never expected happened.
Yeah. So
it's now it got from silly to all right, kind of concerning to serious. It's very serious right now. And if there's any way that I can get people my age and younger to vote or just be aware, if it's even through writing silly poetry, writing serious poetry, giving you a personal experience that I lived, I'm going to try to do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this actually leads perfectly into my next question. So you had included, and you've read, 'Twas the Day After the 2016 election.
Yes, you remember the name.
Yeah. And last week, I don't remember this name, you did the sequel.
Yeah, okay, that one was, I think it was called The Inauguration. That was 2016. and then late inauguration. Because in my heart, I hope he doesn't win, but I feel like it'll happen.
Like it could have, yeah.
And if it does happen, I wanted to be prepared because I wrote the first poem a day before or 2 days before the election, and then the win. And then I turned my TV off. And then the next morning I turned it on and I saw all the Trump stuff, and I was just like, I'm glad I wrote last night and I could just go to work today. Yeah. So it was kind of like, the feeling I got in 2016 was kind of where I was right now, where I would like just sit down and try to, get it all out and try to see what has happened from what I remembered when he first ran and when he won to the dynamic of what it is today, like what now for re-election 4 years later.
Yeah, and the thing and you kind of touched on this, but the thing I found the most, maybe not, like, I don't know if it's the most interesting, but I found the most, that struck me, was that the first one you had, there's a lot of humor in it. Like, it was still serious, and it was still...
It was before he ran.
Yeah.
He won, so...
Well, exactly. We've had 4 years.
I think it was actually when Hillary was like a little bit ahead, and I was kind of like, you know what? It's okay. I turned my television off. We'll be fine. It was kind of like fun. I think who was left? Ohio and PA. I can't remember who was left.
Oh, probably.
When I turned the television off. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was kind of still
But you were
lighthearted
still
and
feeling okay
silly, But when I turned it on, I went, "Oh, I'm glad I wrote last night."
When you wrote that second one, did you, this is more of like a process question, because you've already talked about, like, did you like really sit down with the other poem and then like look at that and like, okay, how can I respond to that? Or were you just sort of like writing off of the cuff from a new place?
I actually, when I wrote the one in 2016, at the bottom of the poem, I actually wrote that in 4 years I'm gonna write another one.
Yeah.
So that kind of, when I read the first one, I want to say I read the first one last year, it'd be a year ago, last November, and I went, I gotta get to writing, for next year, and I just start because I'm a criminal justice graduate, so I have a criminal justice degree, and I worked in corrections for 11 years. So that time, and I did a lot of other law enforcement type of things with that. So I current events for me, I collect them, and I watch the news a lot, and I keep up on the issues that affect me and my family and the people around me that I love. So that data just automatically sticks in my head.
Yeah.
So every little thing that he'd say or every little thing that he'd do that would irritate me, it would just keep, it would just pile up, and it wouldn't leave. So it was easy to just be walking and then rhyme something and then jot it down on my phone. And it just kind of, after a while, it kind of flowed in almost chronological order, as events were happening.
Yeah.
The poem was going. So after a while, I just went I'm gonna stop now. I'm just gonna release it like this before it gets even more morbid. Yeah. But it definitely is a big contrast from the first poem, from the first inauguration. The late inauguration is a lot more somber.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really love hearing about writers' processes, and I like hearing how that worked for you, how it sticks in your head and you kind of work it out.
And I enjoy your style.
Thank you.
Of writing too.
I'm glad.
I appreciate it.
One of the best parts about this is getting to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
I think that was really my last question. So I want to thank you so much for coming every week, but also just for staying and talking afterwards.
And thank you for sharing and inviting. It's nice to have this type of space. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.